Can you hear me okay? Okay, good. I have no idea what I'm going to say, but always a message is given to me. Somehow it comes through. And so we'll just sit here and be patient. Rob, you know, it was touching to see how emotional he was affected by the difficulties that I had to endure. And I know it was a difficult time in my life, and I called it the chapter, Angels Don't Cry. And that was the chapter about my physical difficulties on earth. And so people told me that they could hardly read this book. And I said, well, get a small bottle of brandy and a big box of tissue or a roll of paper towel and sit there, because that's what you need. Because you can't help but cry. And you know what? I chose that, to experience that. It's my last life. And these things happen because I, at one time, was the opposite. I was like them. I had victims, and I was a predator. And I had to experience that because it was my choice. And I feel that these difficult situations, every spiritual leader knows that we go through this difficult time, and it's like taking a rusty piece of metal, and every incident polishes and beats the metal till it's like a mirror. And then it reflects those around them. And they see themselves in the reflection from you, and you have a total connection to people. And people will tell me things about their life because they feel that I will understand, and they know that I never judge, never. I have only unconditional love. That means I love you just because you are. And that's the only reason. And that's the best reason to love everybody. Same way. You're supposed to love everybody, not for any reason except that they exist and they're part of creation. That's it. That's the simplest way to live and the easiest. Unconditional love is the really pure love the Creator intended. And if we live in that, then we've accomplished a lot. And if you can replace judgment with acceptance, and everybody needs to be accepted and loved and not feel insecure in any way. And of course, it's difficult in our society because people tend to judge a lot here. And that is the worst thing, to live and be in, you know, always feeling insecure because you don't feel you fit in, or you're welcome, or you're equal to the other people, or whatever. But people use this because if they can put down somebody and ridicule them, they feel superior. It's a need to feel better than somebody else. And I just want to be equal with everybody else. Exactly, equal. No better because I'm not better. I was fortunate that I was chosen for this mission, and I had the experiences from all my incarnations to share this love and understanding with you. And I'm fortunate for that reason. I don't know everything, but what I do know, I will share with you. And I'll try to answer. If you ask me something and I don't know for real, I'll just say I simply don't know. Because I'm being honest. It's not in the realm of my understanding or something that I learned, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist or that it didn't happen. There are so many beings that I don't know about. The name of them or their mission on earth or what they're doing, I don't know. people ask me, and I'll say, I've heard of it, but I have no idea. Creaky doors, that's part of our... We need W-240. WD-40.
Yeah, close.
I'm a new invention.
W-240.
Yeah.
Twice as strong.
That's the new stuff. Yeah. Love, like I said, is the most important thing and the most valuable energy we possess. And as long as you send this love out and your blessings through your meditation, this world will get better and better. And that's what you got to do. Channel this energy through yourself, and you can send it out with your thoughts and with your love energy. And you can support the people you love. I lay in bed and visualize the people's faces that I love. And I ask the Creator, please send this energy, heal them, and balance them, and protect them, and above all, make sure that everything that they really need is provided. I do that almost every night. But I can't go through every person I know because I would never sleep. Because I know so many faces. I've seen so many faces. And I know each of those souls because they're part of my soul family. I'm meeting new ones all the time. They're always part of my soul family, but I didn't meet them in this lifetime. But so every time I come to these organizations and these conventions or workshops, I feel like it's only a family reunion for me. And I wish I could take you all and hug you as one big group in my arms. In my imagination, I can do that. And in my energy, I can send this energy out and hopefully you can feel it.
Yes.
Because I'm constantly pouring out this love to everyone. Because I really do love you all so very much. And I was so touched when Rob was talking about my suffering part of my book, and he started to cry. He could hardly talk. I was thinking, yeah, he's an emphatic person. He's a lovely soul. I love him so much. I call him my beach boy. He reminds me of a Beach Boy. You know the Beach Boy, the band? Like one of them. When you look at him, he looks that way. And he's like a big child. And I know, don't get sensitive, Rob, wherever you are. You're a very strong, positive influence and a wonderful being. But to me, an ancient being, you are a child, a beautiful child. And he does so much for people, giving them information, making allowances when they need help. He is just so giving and so loving, and we're all so happy to be a part of what he has organized. And he is wonderful. Yeah, he's my big love bug. A love bug. I call my grandchildren. And it's really great, you know, my grandchildren. It's really funny because Tristan knows that I also am Omnec. And I'm not sure he totally understands everything. Maybe he knows because he's read more or looked at things on his own. Because now he has me in his telephone listed under Omnec. Omnec in my phone number. Because he says, I have you in my phone, but I have you under Omnec. I said, oh, that's interesting. Because I was surprised. A teenage boy. And he tells me things. He's not ashamed to tell me anything or share anything with me. He knows that I love him unconditionally no matter what. And he said, no matter what? I said, no matter what. Grandma will love you. It doesn't matter what you do or what happens to you, what mistakes you make. Grandma will listen and certainly support you anyway and help you because I love him so much. And you know, when he was little, he said he was the most beautiful baby I've ever seen. His eyes took up half of his face. Biggest blue eyes. He had the Venusian look if any child did. Is that correct?
That's true.
And
All eyes.
nobody in Europe could believe when they saw the photos that he was a real baby. And he was just adorable. And he would do things and say things. I would share it with everybody because he was my first grandbaby. And he told me one time, yeah, Grandma, I came to Earth to be with you. Aww. When he was only 3. Aww. I came here just to be with you.
That's special bond.
And he looked so much like me. Everybody says that.
Yeah.
Oh, he looks like your child. He's so beautiful.
He looks more like you than I do.
Yes, I know. It's amazing. It's amazing. Nobody wanted to believe that she was my child when she was a baby. Because she had this thick black hair and these little oriental eyes and a little acorn-shaped face. She was beautiful, but her grandmother was born in Russia, and she has a little bit of Mongolian in her history. And so Toby brought a lot of that out when she was born, and you can see it. And everybody, when I went around with her, whose baby is that? I'd say, that's my baby. Well, she don't look like you. I say, I know, isn't she wonderful? She was just so beautiful. She was. She had hair this long. The nurses all played with her hair and combed it because they couldn't believe how much hair she had when she was born. She was remarkable. My little girl. And I wanted to name her Amber, Crystal Amber. And my husband was in love with this artist because he is an artist. And his favorite artist was Mark Toby. Of course, I couldn't name her that because she's a girl. So I named her Tobia, and then Lynn after a photographer friend who was a friend of our family's and took all my earlier modeling photos. He wanted me to model because I was very photogenic always. And he did these beautiful, the first book that ever came out had a photo when I was 18 that he took before Toby was born. And some people know that photo, yes. My hair is over to the side and it's long.
And it's a little darker.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's remarkable. Anyway, her name is Tobia Lynn. But she calls herself Toby. It's okay, it's her name. She chooses it, what she wants to be called. My kids were always that way. Xandar, because Xandar is a Venusian name. Everybody said, wow, that's a great name, but Xandar, it wasn't like everybody else's name. He would call himself Alex or something.
Andy.
Andy, Alex, something.
Van and turned it into Andy. Yeah.
And I would get a phone call and they'd ask for Alex or Andy. And I'd say, no, I don't have no children named that. And he would holler, it's me, Mom, you know, from the background. And of course I'd run and give him the phone. I'd say, why are you calling yourself that? Your name is Xandar. And everybody else, salesmen and other people, my God, that is such a cool name. It's so unique, you should be happy. But, you know, it's the way it is. You never know with children. And my children, you never knew what in the world they were going to do. They would say things absolutely that would shock me, but I didn't know how to react sometimes. Absolutely. In public. They never, you know, thought about where they were or what they were saying because they're just honest little beings. And they're so cute. But I love them to death. But I have the funniest stories from these children. And it was always, and every one of them share these stories today because I remember every little detail. and I shared it with them as they grew up. My mother used to come and visit me, and you know, they call her Grandma Donna, and she loved the kids, but my husband was the health food fanatic. And so my mother would take the kids and me to McDonald's. That was a big treat for my children, you know, but we had to keep it quiet because Daddy would get mad at Grandma, and nobody wanted that. So we went, and I think Toby was 4, Xander was 2, and I set them down before we went home, and I said, now, you can't tell Daddy that we had milkshakes, cheeseburgers, French fries, because he'll get mad at your Grandma, okay? Okay, Mama, everybody agreed. We go home, and we're all sitting there. My husband comes in from work. As soon as he walked in the door, Xander ran over. Daddy, guess what? We didn't go to McDonald's today. We didn't have cheeseburgers, French fries, and milkshakes. And my husband said, oh, you didn't, huh? And I didn't know what to say. My husband couldn't be angry because the baby was so sincere. And he's telling them what we didn't have, and he's naming everything. That's what I mean, you never know what they're going to do. Kids are really the greatest resource we have on this planet. Without them, life would be useless, because every holiday, every incident, they get so much joy out of, and it gives us a reason to celebrate, to enjoy things. To be a child and enjoy life through a child's eyes is remarkable. Really. I love my kids so much. Oh, I gotta get a drink. I'm having trouble because I slept wrong or something, so my left shoulder is like really sprained or something from the neck down to the shoulder. So I'm trying to sit real straight. It's hard to do the peripheral thing. I can't turn my head so low. Anyway, I wanted to, of course, do a mantra because that's necessary. Yeah. I just have to decide which one we'll do today. I have to think of a mantra. I know all of them, but just to think of the right one. You have to give me a minute. I'm really behind on it because I haven't done this in so long, and I love being here, I love doing it, but I don't have everything locked into my consciousness like I used to do when I did it regularly. So you'll have to forgive me.
You're teaching us patience, correct?
Huh?
I said you're teaching us patience.
Yes. You have to have patience with me. I think we'll do Alaya. Alaya is one of my favorite ones. And it also energizes the body and opens the consciousness. Alaya. And we'll do it 6 times. Alaya. I'll do it, and you try your best to keep up. And 6 times, and then we'll sit quietly, and then Barak Abashad. That means may the blessings be in Sanskrit, and that will bring you back. Okay? So sit with your feet together, hands clasped loosely, thumbs together, back straight but relaxed. And then we'll take 3 deep breaths to cleanse the lungs and the body. And then we'll begin, okay? Okay. 3 deep breaths. We will begin. Okay, we shall begin. Baraka, Vishar. Trying to adjust this microphone.
Turn it up just a little. There you go.
Is that better?
Yeah, is it in your face?
No, it's okay. I have to ignore it.
Yes, it's not there.
Yeah, it's just Hoover in there. The worst thing was Norway. They gave me earphones with a little microphone. I felt like an airline pilot. And I was trying to balance them. They had me on this tall stool.
Oh no.
And I was like, oh my God, I got to form some kind of aura around me so I don't fall off the stool. And it was hard to ignore this thing right in your mouth, you know, almost. It was really crazy, but I survived. Yeah, my friend is here with me from Bolivia. He was there as a speaker as well. So it was really an experience. Norway was fascinating. They all have TV programs. Everything is in English. Even though they speak Norwegian, they only speak it amongst themselves. So English is their chosen language for communicating and watching TV, education, everything. It's just remarkable. They're really, really great people. And the thing that fascinated me the most was that they love goblins.
Trolls.
Trolls, yeah. Trolls are like a part of their society. Really. They have them almost everywhere you look. There's little trolls and dolls and endless books, everything with trolls.
Don't they have little houses, like their
Yes,
houses for the
and
trolls?
they have a custom. When they build a house, they build a duplicate, tiny house for the trolls. Always. It's so wonderful when you see this. It looks like a little dollhouse.
So cute.
But it's for the trolls because they honor them. They have a deep connection to them. And I don't know the history of it. I never understood, but I appreciate it. I think it's fascinating. I love different cultures, and I'm fascinated by their history and what it means and what it symbolizes. All that kind of stuff I like to learn. But it's really, there's so much on earth to learn about that you can't do it in one lifetime unless that's all you do. Really, Tibet is the same way. I lived there when I was a child before I came to America. And that was fascinating because I lived in a monastery with all men. And they never had a child there before. So it was an experience for everyone, including me. And because we have a certain temple that exists, in the mountains in Tibet, and it's on many levels, dimensions, and it serves as a place for all people coming to Earth to adjust to the vibrations of this planet and the energy and adapt. And of course, me being a child with a newly manifested body, I had to learn to walk, to talk, to do everything. My vocal cords didn't even operate. I had to refine them, and I learned everything from what they taught me in the monastery. To eat my first food, everything. To live in a world that's solid. I had a lot of bruises because I wasn't used to everything being solid. In the astral plane, you can visualize yourself somewhere and be there. And here, you have to walk with your feet, with your legs, somewhere to get there. You can't just visualize yourself and snap, you're there. So it was very difficult. And I felt trapped inside the body, like being in a suit of armor and having to look at the world through these small eyes. I didn't have this peripheral, all-around angle of vision that I had on the astral. And of course, I couldn't zip to another dimension for learning, for lessons, for everything. We even can travel to the physical world. And I did that a lot because it was part of my education on Venus. Before I came here, I had to learn the language. I had to learn a lot about the culture and children and children's places in society and what role they play, because we're an equal part of our society. But on Earth, children have a place, and the adults are the ones who are in control. We have to listen to them. We don't make the decisions, and everything was different. It was difficult, but I had to learn. And I had a spiritual master named Rami Nuri, and he taught me all the spiritual things and took me to the ascended masters and for learning and preparing me for my spiritual work in the future. The protocols, what is spiritual allowed, and so on. And of course, I was given the guidance of like 7 different masters that I could call upon and communicate with for information, which is wonderful. When I got to the monastery, of course, then all this information was okay, but then here I was in the physical world, and there was so much more to learn. And I was like, oh, overwhelmed. And the monks were always like, well, because I didn't want to sleep. I thought, that's a waste of time, because, you know, on Venus we just absorb energy and re-energize our bodies. We don't have to sleep. We only sit quietly when we meditate and re-energize yourselves. And so they told me, you have to sleep. And I said, why and how? And they said, don't worry about it, because you have a physical body. If you don't sleep, it'll go to sleep on its own. And I said, really? And of course I had to find out. And they let me. You know, one whole day and one whole night, I didn't sleep. And then the next day, I found my head drooping. And it would jerk, and I would come back awake. It was so weird, but it was an experience, you know. I had to, and then the monks were always like, well, what did Omnec refuse to do today? Because I was used to being in control of everything. And I didn't, the bathroom, going to the toilet, when they explained the biological functions of the body, I was horrified. Really? I said, you have to do that? Oh my God. I couldn't imagine. And of course, I thought it was disgusting to go to the toilet. Disgusting. I didn't understand. And that was the most difficult part, because I'm surrounded by men. And they're trying to teach me about this, and I'm rejecting it totally. And they said, there's no way that you can control that part of your body. And explained it step by step, everything I had to do. So that's what I said, it was an adventure for me as well as them. And my teacher was a man who had 6 children of his own. And he was in the monastery because he wanted to be a monk. And he had raised his children, and so they put him in charge of me because he's the only one that knew about children. And of course, since he had children, it was easier for him to deal with me. It was really remarkable. And tasting was something. They wanted me to try this and try that, you know, all these different flavors, lemon, everything, to see my reaction. You know, like you do with babies. You'll try sour stuff on them just to see their reaction to it.
We did that together, yeah.
So they do this to you. And it's not cruelty, it's just a matter of seeing how you're going to react to it. And so I could learn what everything is and how it tastes. So they would prepare something and explain to me what the ingredients were, and I'd taste each thing before it was prepared. So it was a learning process, and I learned the names of vegetables and rice, and that's most of what they serve there. Sometimes lamb, and sometimes meat, but very rarely. They don't refuse to eat meat. It's just that it's not a part of their everyday diet. But monks are really, really flexible. And they're non-judging, and I learned a lot of that stuff from them, to be open, you know. And so when I first came there, I was learning all the stuff, and they were teaching me through music. They brought records and stuff, and some played instruments, and I learned to incorporate the mantras to music. I would sing the mantras. That's how I learned to use my vocal cords. I practiced every day, and the monks would take me out behind the monastery to a field, and I'd go over to a cliff, and they'd set me down, and I'd do my mantras there and hear the echo, so I could see how my voice was developing. And I was sure that it was because I sounded like a child learning to play a violin with my vocal cords. And I said, you really put me out here to keep me away from everybody else, so they couldn't hear me. That's how I felt. But eventually, I learned the mantras. I knew what they meant. I knew what energy I was receiving with each one. And I learned breath control through breathing exercises. And they taught me to sit and hold my breath every day, as long as I could, and increase every day. And this deflated, inflated the lungs and gave me breathing capacity to hold the mantras. So that was part of my training. And it helped me too. I used to love to swim underwater, and I would sit on the bottom of the pool and terrify my mother because I hold my breath forever. And she'd get scared. But it was practice for me, and it was healthy for me. And to this day, they say that I have very healthy, large, pink inflated lungs, which I'm grateful, because it would be difficult, otherwise I'd have a hard time. And through my stroke and everything, I've retained that, and I'm happy. But living in the monastery was really a joyful experience, because we did evening and morning meditation. We went to bed at a certain time, and it's a simple life. You don't have anything. You work, you go and work in the garden, or you work in the monastery and stuff. You always have something to do. Everybody has a chore for the day, and that changes so that you do a little bit of everything, and everybody's treated equal, which is great. I wasn't treated like anything special, but they made sure that I was educated. I learned to use my body. I learned to eat. I learned to speak, and everything that you had to learn to live in the physical world. But they didn't prepare me for coming to America. No, I wasn't ready. Because that was really scary. Because I'm surrounded by all these people with all these different energies and different thoughts. And I was sensitive to that. And I felt bombarded by all of this. And my first ride in an automobile was remarkable. Because a spaceship, you don't have any sense that it's moving. And it's so quiet. And you're like sitting in a room, zipping through the universe, at thousands of miles per hour. It's faster than the speed of light. And in a car, you've got that motor, you've got the horn, you've got bumps, you've got curves. I mean, all this stuff is like terrifying to me. I'm sitting there hanging on like, oh my God, can I survive this? And that was back in the day, they didn't have seatbelts in the 50s, So, but it was a big Cadillac. It was a comfortable car. And my uncle and his Martian friend picked me up and took me to the spaceship. And in Tibet, of course, we didn't have the car. That was in America. In Tibet, we walked down a mountain and took a donkey and rode to the ship. And then we took the ship to Nevada, and there we took a car to our location. So it was all an experience for me. It's all in the book anyway. But people enjoy reading about that, because my first food in America was a hot dog and a Coca-Cola. And my uncle said, I can't wait to see her drink the cola because it's fizzy. And how I reacted to the fizzies is pretty unique. But I liked it anyway. It was, at first it was harsh. It tasted, you know, like a little strong to me because I wasn't used to it. And cola is not a mild, you know, drink. It's not like lemonade or something. The bubbles I had to get used to. But it took time. When I got to Tennessee, I realized the consciousness had changed. The feeling. Because I wasn't aware that there are different races and of how much emphasis they put on it in Tennessee and in the southern states at that time. And of course, I didn't understand that. To me, people are people, and I didn't see no difference. Maybe your skin's a different color, but so is the Martians and the Saturnians. I mean, you know, they don't look like everybody else either. And so I couldn't understand the attitude. And I had to ask Uncle Odin, why do these people think that way? Why do they feel that? I didn't understand. And he tried his best in his simple way to give me a concept, you know. And he said it had to do with the history of America and of the slaves, the black race who were brought to America. He explained it all. It's a whole educational series. But it was hard. I went to church. I never went to church in my life. And going to church, you know, in the South, they're Protestant. And they believe in the Holy Ghost and speaking in tongues. And, you know, they shout and jump around. And I didn't understand what they were doing. My grandmother was very religious. And these people would jump and shout and talk in tongues, and they would just pass out. Really? And I was concerned. But everybody was just going about their business and clapping their hands and singing a religious song or speaking in tongues and saying hallelujah. And I thought, well, I have to get used to this. And then I realized they, in their concept and their religious belief, are working themselves up to an emotional point and a spiritual ecstasy so that they actually force themselves out of the body. And they're having a religious, really spiritual, like orgasm. Really. And I didn't understand that, but now I do. I understand it's the way that they serve God, the way they believe. And they're sincere in what they do. But, you know, it was foreign to me. But then I realized there's all kinds of religions and all kinds of ways to worship God. And I had to learn that little by little, and I did. And yeah, living in the South was really something. And I'll continue talking about it, but I'm gonna have to take a short break. Okay? Thank you. All right, I'm ready. I'm through choking and straining. The water, I loved it, but it went down the wrong way, so I was straining.
Here, let's move that a little left again, if you don't mind. There.
Does that work?
Yes, even if it's too far in your way, just a little bit more is fine. We just want to see your face.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah?
Yeah. That's the problems of the physical. And there's lots of them we have to tend with. Being a physical being, you encounter a lot of difficulties. And I'm learning, still learning. I have to be patient with myself. because I'm slow, but at least I'm going. That's what's important. I get angry with my body because I can't control it like I used to. But on the other hand, I have to learn to live with it and do the best I can. And that's what I'm trying to do. It's hard, really. And the doctors here, you know, they want to cure you. And then they give you medication that your body adjusts to, then you have to take it all the time. And that, I hated that. But I accepted it because that's the way the society is. And if I don't do it, then I don't feel good, and the doctors are not happy. I went through so much difficulties, and I was at odds with so many doctors. I finally just gave up and said, okay, I'm going to do what they ask me. Because they can get very temperamental. Yeah, if you don't follow their instructions. You're their patient and that's it. And I had to learn that because I was always in charge of myself. And I was independent, and I was strong, and I was sure, and I was confident. So, like I said, when I had the stroke, I couldn't accept it. I thought, well, it's just a temporary thing. I can shake off, and then I'll be fine. And I didn't go to the doctor. Everybody was pleading with me and trying to beg me. They wanted to call ambulance and do everything, and they were right. And I was just sure that I would be fine because I always recuperated and got strong. And I was a fast healer, and I was sure that I would continue to be that way all my life. So when it didn't happen, I was very unhappy. But I couldn't do anything about it because I realized it felt like a heavy weight hanging on my body, and it was my arm because it was totally dead, you know, paralyzed. And I couldn't stand up, of course, couldn't walk. People were carrying me upstairs to my bedroom and down to the car to go to the neurological clinic the next day. Even in the middle of the night, I tried to get up and go to the bathroom, and I fell in the floor with a thump. And Anya's dog, whose name was Sheila, come running over. She was a Dalmatian. And she was terrified because I almost fell on her. And I was laughing, believe it or not. I was laughing. I forgot that I couldn't walk. I was thinking, well, I gotta get up and go to the toilet. I got up and fell down. That was and of course, we had this neighbor in Germany, a huge guy who come up and carried me all the way to the car. And that's it. That's where I ended up in a neurological clinic. And living in the clinic, I encountered people in such bad shape who needed constant help, who were in wheelchairs, had to be fed, had to be carried, couldn't do nothing. And neurological clinic, they help a lot of people in different situations, a lot worse than I was. And I was like, well, and they told me, don't worry, we'll get you through this. And my son, Xandar, oh my God. Xandar was so attached to his mom. It was devastating for him. Thank God he stayed in Germany with me. And he could travel to where I was. I don't know if he could have survived if he hadn't been able to get to me. He's just that way. And the lady in the room with me at the clinic was crying. She said, I never saw a boy love his mother so much. She was streaming tears. She said, I never seen that. I hope my son loves me that much. But I said yes, and I taught him to show his emotions. And he's that way about everybody he's concerned about. When he was 2, his grandmother had to have surgery on her foot because she had a hammer toe. And he was so concerned. Every time he saw her, he was asking, Grandma, how is your foot? Is it okay? You know, he was so concerned. At 2 years old, you'd be surprised. He was remarkable. And he still is. He's just emphatic. You know, it's part of being Venusian. My children all have it. Here I go with the water in the coffin. It's my throat that's dry. I don't mind talking, but you have to take water because otherwise your throat gets dry. That's the problem of being a person. And a physical body. Yeah. We don't talk on Venus. We just communicate mentally. One day it'll be the same here. We'll telepathically communicate. And then it'll be easier.
Easier on the voice box. For sure.
Yes. Easier on the vocal cords. And of course, I'm not used to talking that much or doing the mantras, so it's a little bit of strain for me, you know. But I enjoy it. I'm really happy I still can do it. That's all that's important. I want to tell you, when I lived in Tennessee, and I encountered that the black people had an area where they lived separate from the white people, really. They lived in a certain side of town. Believe it or not, they had their own neighborhood, own place. And they didn't live in the same neighborhood as we did, you know. And it was totally beyond me. But I always loved them. I always thought they were wonderful people. And my grandmother said that when she was a young girl, and she had 11 children, mind you, and her husband died of black lung because he was a coal miner. And so she was alone with these 11 children, and so she had to survive. She had a small farmhouse, and they had some property. It still exists there in Falling Water, and it's called Pickett's Gulch, because my grandmother's name was Pickett. Her maiden name was Orange, like the orange, the fruit, and her family was from Norway. And her husband was English, and his name was Mr. Pickett, Henry Pickett. And so they had a rich history, you know. And my grandmother said that if it wasn't for a wealthy black family in the neighborhood, she wouldn't have been able to survive with her 11 children, because she washed clothes and did things to help this family with their house. And they made sure that she had the money that she needed for her children. So she was grateful, and she didn't have a prejudiced bone in her body, you know, even though she lived there. I guess she understood in her Christian way the attitudes of the other people, but she never accepted it or believed it, you know. So she explained a lot to me. She was good at explaining. She was a wonderful lady, and I love her very much, and to this day, because she taught me a lot, really. And my grandmother, I loved her so much, and I was with her from age 7 to age 14. And at 14, I took a bus to go have a summer holiday with my mother. Then my mother decided that I was going to stay with her and not return to my grandmother. And of course, I didn't have no choice. I was her child. And so my whole life was changed from that point on. My life began the suffering, I would say. So it was difficult. But Sheila had already suffered at the hands of the same stepfather when she was only 7, so I found that out. So her life was already difficult when she left this world. And I just took up where she left off. And that's the way it was. And living in Tennessee, I knew every person's name in our neighborhood. I went to school there all my life, you know, since I started school at age 7. And of course, I was behind, but I accepted that. I was smarter than the other kids because I was grade behind. It was okay. And I knew the principal, I knew everybody in the school. Everybody in the neighborhood would always say, "Hi, Sheila," when I was going down the street, because they knew me. And on the way to our church, which we went to church every Wednesday for prayer meeting, and every Sunday for Sunday school and church in the evening, my grandmother insisted, so I went all the time. And I enjoyed the singing and all that kind of stuff. And believe it or not, through my grandmother, I got to meet Elvis Presley before he was a singer, because he came through with a revival tent and a minister. He was singing gospel songs for the preacher, along with several black people as his backup singers. And of course he had a heavenly voice and sang gospel songs, and he was handsome and good-looking young boy and talented. But I only knew him as Elvis Presley at that time. Later I realized, oh my gosh, and now he's famous and I already met him. But I was just a kid, like 12 or something. So it's remarkable. I met so many famous people throughout my life, and I don't know why. But I'm sure there's a purpose to it. Maybe they had to get this spiritual information unconsciously. Because, we're in that kind of work, it's difficult. And you lose control of the things that you take for relaxation, and eventually, like Elvis, ended up dying and overdosing on stuff. And also he was overweight and everything at the time. I seen him on TV, the very last performance he gave. And I said, this man is not gonna live long, because he was so bloated and he was sweating so bad. And I knew that he wasn't gonna be with us long. And sure enough, we lost him. But he was remarkable, he really was. His voice was so beautiful. I mean, it is to this day the same. And his religious songs are unbelievable. And one day we were going to church, my grandma and I, and it was an evening service. And of course we went around 6 o'clock or so, and we're walking there, and across from the church there was a house with a black family that lived there. Because our house was, we had to walk quite a ways from our neighborhood to get there. And I couldn't believe it. There was snow on the ground. It was winter time. And I seen this black lady, and smoke was pouring out of the house. The house was on fire. And this black lady was running out with all the kids, and she had a little baby, and wrapped in a blanket. She laid it on the snow to run back and get the other children. And I went over and picked the baby up and stuck it under my coat and was holding it. And I thought that was the thing to do. But the other white people were appalled. Really, they couldn't believe that I actually did that, because to them, they wouldn't do that. But I said, why not? It's a baby. It's a little baby. I don't care what color it is, because it needs to be protected. And that's the way I felt. And when I got old and I was grown, and we lived back in Tennessee, my children and myself, we went to church. And I finally refused to go to church again because we had a dinner at the church. You're supposed to invite friends and so on, and I worked at a place, and I invited a black friend of mine to the dinner. And they told me it wasn't allowed. I said, excuse me? This is God's house. Who decides that? I didn't understand it. And I said, well, then you lost a member because I'm not going to be a member or participate in your services when you're not welcome in a church because you're a different race. That is something I cannot do. And that was it. Then I just distanced myself from the organization. That was the way I am. And it's nothing against the organization, it's just that when people make rules for God's house, I can't accept that. No. And I will not, because I'm never going to be that way. So I learned, you know, you got to speak out. But when I was a child, it was difficult, of course. You can't speak out against adults when you're not an adult. Because children were to be seen, not heard. Yeah. And, you know, we had dinner and there was too many people. The children had to stand up and eat because there wasn't enough chairs. And I had to accept that. You know, that's just the way it was. It was really an educational process to grow up in the South. And I loved it on one hand. On the other hand, it was kind of strange. My grandmother, for instance, she could take a chicken by the neck and wring it with one hand and twist its head off. And take the chicken, put it in hot water and fall. She did all of that. And the first time I saw it, oh my God, I was only about 8 or 9, and she had this rooster under a bushel basket in the laundry room. And I've been talking to him all day and all night. I named him Mr. Doodles. He was my friend. And I woke up the next morning, I went down, and here's my grandma wringing his neck out in the yard. I was like, what? I was terrified. And she came in, I was crying. I said, you killed Mr. Doodles, oh no. And she said, yeah, that was our dinner. I said, not me. And I would not eat chicken soup. I would not have a piece of chicken because that was my friend. And that was that. No, I learned later about the soul and how they serve the purpose and they choose that. The animal knows that's going to happen eventually. But it was a shock to me because I was a child. And in my mind, I felt love and everything for even sticks or pieces of paper as flying around in the wind and nobody takes them out of the wind, you know. It was like I loved everything, so I didn't understand. And I thought, my God, you can't love and protect every living thing. It's not possible. But you can, in just a different way. I can't collect them all and bring them home. But I tried, yes. And I have brought birds home off the street. When they were sitting in the middle of the street, I took them on the bus home with me.
Set their wings.
Yeah, and nourished them because I could. And I even found a little green finch on the city street of Chicago, on the sidewalk. And I thought, my God, picked it up, put it in my purse. And this lady on the bus asked me if she could have it because she had a bird that died. And of course I was happy to give it to her. But that's just the way I live, you know. I love everything and I try to take care of it. And now somebody has to take care of me. Like, oh, I'm not having that up here.
Do you want me to help you? Let me see if I can fix it or at least move it. Falling on you.
Maybe there's nothing you can do.
I can at least take it out of your way,
Yes.
so you're not getting attacked by the pillow, okay? Is that better?
No.
No, you want me to stick it behind your neck? How's that?
I just wriggled it out of the way.
Okay. Is that okay?
It's because I'm squirming. I'm not being still. I gotta be still. But I had a remarkable life. You know, I had a deep connection to the American Indians. And an Indian came to me in Switzerland. He was from South Dakota. And he was a Sioux Indian. And he found me to invite me to a big Indian ceremony in around 2002 or so. And it was really remarkable. They had American Indians of every nation arriving at Devil's Tower in Utah by camper, by horseback, all kinds of travel. And they came to this one location for the first time, coming together in peace and harmony to give blessings at the summer solstice. And I was invited. I felt so honored because they had read my books and shared it with the people in their tribes. And the Indians decided that I was their great white hope. That's what they said. Yes. And because I talk about the Saturnians being the heritage of the Indian race, they came to Earth and eventually they were the Indian race on Earth. And so everything that I said corresponded with what they had been taught about the Great Father, and the spirits had taught them things like this. And to them, their heritage is the stars. They believe the people from above and all that because that's part of what they were taught. Many Indian stories are about a spaceship coming and landing and taking groups of them away to another planet. It's quite normal for them. And I didn't know that. So I traveled with my friend Bob, who I live with now. He's 82 now. But then he drove me all the way from Chicago to Utah, to the Devil's Tower. We got a hotel room, and we're supposed to be there at noon. And of course, we're there early. And I had this Indian fringe top and leather pants. No, they weren't leather, but they looked suede or something. And knee-high boots, leather boots. But then they told me, as a female, you have to wear a blanket around you because they wear dresses. And I thought, oh, I didn't know that. Only the men wear the pants and the little, what do you call those things that are like hanging down?
Tunics.
They go around the waist. Eh? Yeah. Well, they're not attached to a top of them or just from the waist. But anyway, you have to wear a dress at the ceremony. And the women are put at one location and the men at another. And they explained the whole thing to me, that they have a north gate, a south gate, an east and west gate as the entrance to the circle for the ceremony. And they invite the chiefs of different tribes and the medicine men into the circle and introduce them, and they do a ceremony. The chief does a ceremony and a blessing in their own language. They sing or whatever, they're chanting, and then the medicine man dances around the fire, throwing in offerings, and they tell you, if you're in the audience, you can take tobacco. You can smoke a cigarette, or you can take a pinch of tobacco and throw it in the fire. As part of the ceremony, it's a blessing, because tobacco to them is holy. And I didn't know that. Anyway, it was really interesting. They had a princess come all the way from Tibet, and one of the Indian chiefs had visited her a long time ago, and he had her moccasin, and he returned it to her. They brought her down on horseback, and he walked out with her moccasin, put it on her foot. They had so many ceremonies, and singing and dancing, and men were riding around on horseback to make sure you didn't block any of the entrances, the gates, because each tribe chose which gate they would come in, you know, for the ceremony. It was beautiful, really, really. But Bob was separated from me because he was with the men and I was with the women, and we stood there all day on our feet for the ceremony. And he did it. But they wouldn't let us take videos, was not allowed. I had to remember everything from memory. I drew diagrams for my book so that I could give the information to everybody. And you know, when I was younger, I think 16, I lived in Nevada. And one evening I was on a walk, and I was out in the desert walking, and I found this rock. It had a burn place on it, like somebody had burned something. And I sat down there and was doing the meditation, and sat there for a long time, and I smelled some leather, and quietly there was a man appeared there, and I was like, oh my goodness, an Indian with long gray hair and braids. And he had a band around his head, beaded, and it had spiders on it. And on his belt, everything was the same way. And I was sitting there, and I said, oh, excuse me, have I done something I shouldn't, should I not be here? Am I, trespassing or something? He said, no, not at all. He said, I came to bring you a gift. And I said, really? And he gave me a ring, a turquoise and a bloodstone. And it was a spider. The red part was the top of the spider's body, and the turquoise was the other, and the legs were made from silver, little curved leg coming out. And I couldn't wear it at the time, it was too big, so I wore it on the chain for years, and then I wore it all the time, forever. And I didn't realize that this was from the Hopi spider clan, the ring. And this guy that gave it to me was a chief. And whether he was physical or whether he was an apparition, he was real at the moment after he gave it to me. I was surprised. And I didn't know that I was given a blessing from the Indian tribes and made a connection. I didn't know that. And that's how I found out years later. An Indian told me when he seen the ring, where'd you get that ring? And I said, I told him the story. He said, because you couldn't buy that. I said, no, I did not. And he said, because they would not sell you one of the symbols of their tribe. And I said, wow, I didn't know that. But it's things I learned along the way, and things I've experienced on earth are remarkable. But I didn't know that they were preparing me to become a spiritual master. That was something I did not know until last year. I learned that in Germany. When I went to Holland and I met an old Tibetan man there, and he gave me this bag, and in the bag there was a ring, and it's silver and it's got a red stone. It won't even fit me, it's so big, but he gave it to me, and he said, this is from a teacher and a master, and it's to be passed on to you. And I cried, really. And he said, because you have reached that state. And now you can tell people, because I didn't know it. It was like a rod of power they gave me. And when people hold this ring, they cry, because it does have so much energy. It's just a symbol, but it's there. It was another master's ring, and I've got a staff, a wooden staff also. They gave me everything. Yeah, it's gifts to me. Well, I really, Lord, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me ramble on and share with you a little bit about my life. Yes.
So we can do questions.
Yes, of course. Question time. I'll try to answer.
So anyone who's got questions, we have 10 minutes for questions.
You can come up and ask him on the microphone.
Hi.
There's a microphone, don't stand there.
Microphone, please.
There's a microphone
To the left.
to the left.
Was it not wise?
Usually. Now,
It's a pleasure to see you today.
it's a pleasure to see you
Thank
too.
you for coming. It's an honor.
Thank you.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you, and just to kind of get some clarity, is Valiant Thor the same as Odin's son, Thor?
No.
No, so there's no correlation. Do you know any knowledge of the Greenland Bridge?
On what?
The Greenland Bridge.
No, I have
It's like
no
a
idea.
place. Okay, yeah. Well,
Is it a spiritual place?
yeah.
Okay.
So,
I accept that because they're everywhere. And they've been connected by energy to serve as the Earth's protection during the transformation. Every spiritual location.
well, I was told a little bit about it. There's 7 million poles and pillars of light. It's kind of like a rainbow bridge.
I'm sure there is. I agree. I accept that 100%. Because Mount Shasta is also one place. So there are many. But they're all, like I said, we're connected by energy, bands around the world as protection for the earth during the transformation. So native beings can no longer come to earth and prey on mankind unless they're invited individually by the person. So they can't abduct people, they can't implant people anymore. That's all in the past.
So with the new healing technology of sound frequency, similar to like what the whales and the dolphins do you see that coming through
Yes,
the
I do.
planet and
You
starting?
know, all the animals have changed their frequency to help with the process of the transformation. And they constantly make these sounds as giving part of their energy to the process. It's from every level and every being, the animals, plants, everything are participating in the transformation process and the protection of planet Earth.
Wonderful. Well,
Yes,
it's
it
good
is
to hear
wonderful.
that confirmation, because I know more and more people are
Well,
working.
most of it's written in my books, you can read about it. In the book, Wisdom, Simply Wisdom and Truth, a lot of that's in there. The unknown history of the earth, which is before people occupied the earth, what happened. All of about the beings traveling in huge spaceships coming to the solar system, everything is in there. It's everything I learned on Venus, given to people on Earth. So it's important this kind of information is part of your history because you're a human being and your heritage is from the original aliens who came to Earth and colonized the Earth. That's where all the human beings came from. They came here from far, far away in huge motherships, traveled to this universe, and found planets for their individual homes. So it's all in there. And it's all important.
I'm happy to hear you have that strong
Thank you.
Native American Indian connection. And
Yes,
all the
of
other
course,
connections.
because they're part of it. They're part of the original people who brought here.
Right. Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much for being here.
And thank you. Thank you everybody for being
Yes,
here.
it's wonderful.
Thank you all for being here.
Okay, so my question comes from when you're on Venus and it's telepathic communication.
Yes.
Do people still sing with vocal cords, or how does that fit into the realm?
On Venus, we can create sounds and imitate sounds that we've heard,
Okay.
music and everything. So we have a big relation to that. But communicate, they are actual thought forms,
Right.
which in my book I have a copy of the Venusian letter. It's thought forms on paper. So you can see what they look like. Some people have had tattoos made out of the symbols because they're so beautiful. It's ancient, ancient. Before people learned to speak, it's how they communicated. But the thoughts are symbols,
Okay.
geometric and ancient symbols. But singing and music is part of our society. And we duplicate, and we even have paintings that every color emits a sound, and it constantly changes on Venus. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So sound, light and sound is the way the Creator expresses itself in the physical world, in the lower world. In all of the dimensions, light and sound are important.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This will be the last question, then we're going to do a little closing energy with our beloved Omnec.
Hi. This is perhaps something to help me understand our physicality here
Yes.
better. The beings that are different than us and not as physical, are they more, I mean, are we still quantumly entangled? Do our electrons still communicate with them? Do they have electrons? Do they have atoms? I mean...
Are you talking about entities and
yeah, entities, you know, like...
beings from other dimensions?
Yes. Oh, well, even, you know, multidimensionally or our universe? I mean, I'm just a bit confused on...
Yeah. There is beings in our society that are nature vision, you know, they control nature and water, plants, animals, they have one for each one. And they're a part of our society, but they live in another dimension, but they control the physical environment.
Because they thought it up.
Yes,
They just...
exactly. They create.
Right, right. And
But
are
they're-
these etheric beings? I mean, is there any... I guess what I'm trying to understand is, you know, and here's my hierarchical ladder of...
And there's a lot of human beings who are sensitive to them and can communicate and are aware of them.
Wow.
And that's a reality.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
It is.
And
It's amazing.
eventually, after the transformation, each individual will have this ability. Again. Again.
It's about time.
That's right. We're going back to where we were. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Omnec. What I would like to do to close this part of the session, I would have receiving that we're going to create an etheric Sri Yantra, which is the symbol of the divine feminine, which is going to represent the mastery, this activation of the feminine. So I want everyone to raise their hands up to the heavens. And what you're going to do is start receiving that energy from all the female masters, that divine portal, and bring it down. As you bring it down, then you're going to send it up to Onec in offering. Okay, and then from her, it's going to go back up. So it's coming here, and then it's going back up to the heavens. And then it comes, and just feel that circulation. Bring it down, bring it here, bring it up. We're creating the multiple triangles around us, the sacred Sri Yantra all around us. We're activating that. See the divine diamond platinum level of it here getting activated, coming through. In honoring, in adoration of the divine feminine. In form, in formless forms, higher forms, in your own state, all of ourselves. Feel that adoration. Send the love up here. Receive the great love down. Let the love pour down, pour it up here. We thank you. We thank you, divine mothers. We thank you, holy masters. We thank you, friends here, becoming masters. We thank you, everyone. And we seal this Sri Yantra all about us in a wonderful, wonderful awakening of the feminine energy on the earth within us, that balance, that understanding, that acceptance, that integration of the divine feminine in our lives, in our hearts, the ecstasy of the feminine, the unlimited love of the feminine. We say, yes, 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 so be it, so be it, so be it. The Sri Yantra is activated.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have another sound.